Well, hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Today we are filming my top 23 books I want to read in 2023, which is kind of one of my favorite videos to film around this time of year. It just really helps me compile a list of books that I own that I really want to prioritize, that I really think I'm going to love. I will get to what that twist is in just 1 minute, but before we continue on, I just wanted to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, which is Book of the Month. Book of the Month is a super popular and fast-growing online book service for readers, and their mission is to promote new and emerging authors and help readers discover books that they love. Their team vets hundreds of books each month and gives readers their choice from a curated selection of new and early release titles, so that way you can spend more time reading and way less time researching. Book of the Month is risk-free and you can skip any month at any time and you will never be charged. Plus, they have the best price for new release hardcover fiction. You can get your first book for just $9.99 using the code NEWYEAR. I was so excited to see January's picks, especially because this book, What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall, was on the list. I love Kate Alice Marshall so much, mainly because she has written some of the creepiest, scariest books I have read to date. This is her adult debut mystery thriller, and you guys know how much I love a creepy, twisty thriller, and I just know this one is going to be nothing short of amazing, so I cannot resist picking this one up as my choice. Like I said, you guys can use the code NEWYEAR to get your first hardcover book for only $9.99. If you guys have been in the book community for any amount of time, you know hardcovers are typically $28 to $30, so this is honestly a steal. I would highly recommend checking out their website, seeing what other picks they have for January. Sign up and give it a go. I love Book of the Month so much and could not recommend it enough. Like I said, I decided to put a little bit of a twist on this list this year, which you guys have probably seen around Bookstagram, a list of 12 books that your 12 friends pick for you to read. I pulled from that idea a little bit because I have 9 books here that my friends chose for me, and let me just say they chose very well. Most of them are fantasy. I tried to stray away too much from fantasy series. I do want to get more into fantasy this year, but we do have a decent variety here, and I cannot wait to share with you guys what they chose. But also, the idea of this is to just read more of my physical shelves, because you know it's a problem when you go into Barnes & Noble looking for a new book to read, and anything and everything that sounds good you already own on your shelves at home. Clearly, I should be set for the year. Other than new releases, I don't need to be buying any more backlist books, but the point of this is just to motivate me to read more books on my shelf. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting the titles of all these books in a hat, a jar, whatever, and possibly picking one or 2 for each TBR of the month. Unfortunately, I didn't have this ready for my January TBR. I am not going to go back and reference my 22 books from last year because I feel like that's a little bit too cruel, and my reading taste has honestly changed so much in the past year. I don't want to like recap what I read or didn't read, because I can guarantee I probably only read a couple on that list. I am going to be running through these fairly quick. I know that you guys have seen these books a million times because, like I said, they're backlist titles. So I'm mainly going to be sharing with you why I'm putting these on the list, why they're priority for me, and maybe why some of my friends chose some of these books for me. Starting us off with my sister's choice, which is 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. And let me just say, I did make it through the first 92 pages of this book, but I was so confused. I don't think I was in the right mindset to read this at the time. This is one of the very first mystery kind of thrillers or suspense that I ever picked up, and I don't know why I didn't finish it. This author has had nothing but amazing reviews, especially for this book, and it's probably been on my shelf the longest. Clearly, I need to get to it this year. Like I said, at the time, I was just so confused and frustrated, but I've heard some people have actually been even more confused by the ending, which I think just scares me a little bit, but now that I've been reading more mystery thrillers, I'm hoping that will help me better comprehend this book, maybe. I know this is more historical as well. There's mention of Downton Abbey and Agatha Christie, which I love Agatha Christie, so I have no excuse not to read this. This has been on my shelf for way too long, and it definitely has potential to be 5 stars. The audiobook was phenomenal, and I just don't have any more excuses. So thank you so much, Gabby, for being predictable and choosing this book for me, but genuinely I am very excited to finally read this one. And another choice I knew was going to be obvious from my friend Kendall is the series Caraval by Stephanie Garber. Kendall has tattoos from this series, so I know it's gonna be good because we have very similar reading taste. I don't know anyone else that rates books the same way I do. We love and hate the same exact books, which is so scary, but this is why I trusted her with choosing a book for me. This is one of those books or series that I have had so many people tell me specifically that I would love this. I think it's because I also love The Night Circus, even though they're very different. I just know that I'm gonna love this because I love atmospheric, kind of dark circus. You have competition, and I feel like this is just gonna be the perfect formula for me to love. So I'm hoping I pick this up or choose this out of the jar early in the year because I would love to just binge this whole entire series. This is probably one of the books I'm most excited for because I just know, I have this feeling that I am going to give it 5 stars. And the next book that I feel extremely guilty that I have not read yet, so thank you, Elizabeth, for making me feel guilty even more. That is Small Favors by Erin A. Craig. House of Salt and Sorrows is one of my top favorite books, maybe of all time. From what I remember, I did start this. Yeah, I read 50 pages of this book, and I don't know why I did not finish it. It could have just been timing and how busy I was at the time, and I really want to take my time and just soak this book up because Erin A. Craig only can write so much, and she is one of my favorite authors, especially in the young adult genre, so I am just so eager to pick this one up. All I can recall from this book is our main character's father is a beekeeper, and I think it's magical realism. I could be wrong, and it's kind of giving me The Village vibes, if you guys have seen that movie, and I loved it. So I really hope this ends up kind of turning dark because Erin A. Craig can write some really dark stuff, and I'm so here for that. Clearly my friends know me very well because a lot of these are fantasy books, but I don't mind at all because I have got a lot to catch up on from the past couple years, and this one I was not expecting Lauren to choose for me, but I am so glad she did. That is Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson. Like Erin A. Craig, I love these two so much. They are my top favorite young adult authors, and I never got around to reading this one. It sounds spooky, it sounds creepy, and I think I was under the impression that I had to read this around fall or Halloween time, but honestly, I think winter is a great time to read spooky books. It's just more moody and atmospheric, and it's raining a lot, at least where I live, so I feel like there's just that perfect ambience with rain and everything just to read some dark, scary books. I know very little about this one, but I think she's like a soul keeper of some sort, and I want to say this is a standalone or it's going to be a duology. The main reason Lauren said she chose this one is because she's very intrigued by it, as am I, so hopefully I'll be able to read it pretty early on this year and be able to give her my thoughts. Another very highly anticipated book that I still have not read. The next book that my friend Jordan chose for me is These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. I have heard this one be compared to A Court of Thorns and Roses series. Clearly we have a love triangle going on. I just love this cover, and this redhead is so gorgeous. I'm just so drawn to this, but I'm also a little bit scared that it's been compared to Sarah J. Maas because I don't really like when people do that. I don't know why. It just sets the bar so high for me to like something. If the pace is good and the atmosphere is great, I think I could really fall in love with this one, and then I can buy the second one because it's only a duology. I'm just ready to try out some new authors as well in the fantasy genre, and yeah, thank you so much, Jordan, for picking this one for me. And the next book that my friend Caitlin chose for me is Notes on an Execution. I feel like this isn't one I would typically pick up because it does say a literary suspense, and I do like mystery thrillers, but literary, not so much. But because I heard so many amazing, great things about this last year, I'm willing to give it a shot because I don't think it's gonna disappoint. But it's a story of a serial killer on death row told primarily through the eyes of the women in his life. I'm very nervous going into this because it sounds very hard-hitting, some possible trigger warnings for sure, but I feel like it's just going to be very inspirational and very needed in my life, if that makes sense. Definitely changing it up from all my fantasy with this one, but I'm glad because I do need to kind of read other things that cleanse my palate and stretches my reading taste a little bit more. And then my friend Keisha chose a fantasy for me, which I also was kind of not expecting because she doesn't read a lot of fantasy. I figured she would choose a book that maybe was one of her favorites she wanted me to read, but I guess you could say that's true of this one. She recently read Belladonna. I am so curious about this one, but let's just take a moment, let's just take a second to appreciate this cover. Are you kidding me? That may or may not be the main reason why I actually bought this one, but hopefully the story is just as enjoyable. The main reason I think that she chose this one is she compared it a little bit to Addie LaRue, but also The Secret Garden, and I really like both of those, and I love Addie LaRue, so I feel like this definitely has a good shot for being 5 stars. I do know it's a little bit heavier on the romance, but this one just absolutely blew up this past year, and I'm ready to see what all the hype is about. Next, I have a backlist mystery thriller, which definitely intimidates me a little bit, but my friend Rachel said this is her all-time favorite book from her favorite author, and that is The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. You guys probably know I have a love-hate relationship with Ruth Ware, which is why I'm very scared to read this because her books can either make it or break it for me. I think the only book I've genuinely enjoyed by her is Turn of the Key, but this one sounds right up my alley because it looks very gothic, takes place at a mansion, and I want to say there's like a game of some sort, but there's some sort of inheritance involved at an estate, so maybe Knives Out kind of vibes. I don't know what I'm gonna think of this going into it, but Ruth Ware is very enjoyable as far as writing, so I know that it could possibly be one of my favorites by her. I'm really hoping that I'm with Rachel on this one and it ends up being one of my favorites by her as well. And last but definitely not least, my friend Kayla chose Killers of a Certain Age, and I am so excited but so scared again to read this book. I feel like there's been such mixed reviews for this one, but I really think this could be 5 stars for me. All I know is that we follow these 3 or 4 ladies that are a group of retired assassins, and I don't know what that means. I don't know if they go back on a mission, but I have heard great things from people I love. She said she hasn't read this one yet, so I think she's just interested to hear my thoughts, but I am too. But I remember being very stoked when I first heard the synopsis for this one. I'm hoping that that means I'm going to be just as excited to finally read it. Those are all the books that my friends have chosen for me, which I personally think they did a great job. I sent them a picture of my shelves and I told them to choose one off my physical TBR, so I am hoping that that goes well for me. Hopefully I don't hurt any feelings if any of those are my friends' favorite books. I'm very excited to see what my first pick is going to be in February. Now we're going to go into, I think, the 14 or 15 books I chose for myself. Starting us off with Shady Hollow by Juno Black. I'm sure a lot of my friends are screaming at me right now in excitement about this book, as am I, because I really got into the cozy mystery genre this past year. Completely fell in love. I'm obsessed. I have a whole cozy mystery shelf now, and I cannot believe I never got around to reading this. Like, what in the world is wrong with me? This takes place in a small town where all of our characters are actually animals, but they have a lot of human characteristics. They act like humans, they function as humans, so I don't think that's gonna be too much of a turnoff for me, hopefully. But I think there's just a murder in the town, and a fox is the main character, and so she takes it upon herself to uncover kind of the history of this town. I'm just itching to finally read this one, so I had to add it to this list. Another genre genre that I am very excited to read more of this year. I don't know why I don't, because when I do, I really enjoy it. That is sci-fi fiction or kind of sci-fi thriller, starting us with Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I read Recursion and I actually really enjoyed it. There was time travel, it was just full speed ahead, great pace, and I've heard this one is better than Recursion, so I'm hoping that I'm gonna like this one even more, but I need to get around to it. This has been sitting on my shelf for probably years now, maybe 4 or 5, and I don't understand why it continues to collect dust, because I have a feeling this could be at least 4 stars for me. I also have The Measure by Nikki Erlich, which I added to my January TBR, but I also wanted to add it to this list because if I don't get to it in January, it is going straight into the pile, because I believe this won Goodreads choice, but also possibly a few awards in 2022. It sounds nothing short of amazing, because what happens in this story is everyone in the world receives a wooden box giving them the day I believe that they're going to pass away. I think this may follow different perspectives of people that are trying to figure out where these wooden boxes came from, and I'm just very interested to see where this goes, and I'm just very interested to see what we uncover in this book. Another sci-fi book that I would love to get to that I have put on so many different TBRs is The Institute by Stephen King. The only other Stephen King I have read was Pet Sematary. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't love it. That could just be because I'm not a huge fan of horror, but because this one is more magical realism, the kids have superpowers and they're being tested and they're being watched, I feel like that just sounds more like a superhero kind of fantasy plot that I would enjoy way more versus like bloody horror. I have a feeling I could really appreciate and enjoy this one. The premise just sounds fascinating to me, but this is one of the 2 Stephen King I have on my list. It was either this one or The Long Walk, so of course naturally I would pick the longer book, but I feel like this pick is going to have a better chance of me loving Stephen King even more. I'm very interested to see what I think of this book when I'm finished. Another book that I'm so ashamed I haven't read yet, because I absolutely fell in love with Grady Hendrix because of my best friend's exorcism last year. I had to add The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires on my list this year because this one is very controversial, but I also just want to read all of Grady Hendrix's books because I do love him as an author now. I know there's things that make you mad in this book, but I know a lot of times that is the point that Grady Hendrix is trying to get across, and I want to know why this book is so polarizing. People either love it or people either hate it. I want to know where I fall on that spectrum. I read The Broken Girls by Simone St. James and felt kind of iffy about that one, so I haven't read a book by her since. I'm not sure if she's going to be the author for me, so I would love to give her a second shot. So I'm putting The Sundown Motel on my list. This one seems to be the favorite among most people, and I did start reading this at some point. Again, I do not know why I didn't finish it, but I was very intrigued straight up from the beginning. I know she usually writes a little bit more paranormal or ghosty. I really love Sarah Pinborough because she includes a little bit more of those paranormal elements, so I really think I could love Simone St. James, but I'm just very unsure, and so I would love to read at least one more book by her just to kind of feel it out a little bit. One of my top favorite books from last year was also by Taylor Jenkins Reid. That was One True Loves, and I think I have really fallen in love with her backlist. So I had to add After I Do to this list, but I'm also really scared because this has potential for a cheating trope, and I hate cheating tropes, but all my friends have told me it's just completely different. It's going to play out differently than you expect, so I'm going to trust them on this one and hope I really end up loving it. Essentially, we have a married couple that decides to break up with no strings attached for a year and then come back and see if they still want to be married or see if they still love each other. So I am very nervous about that because I would never do that in my marriage, and it just goes completely against my nature or my morals to do anything like this. So it's very unrealistic in a way, but that also is what is making me very intrigued. So I'm really thinking this may have potential to even top One True Loves. I don't know though, but I'm very interested to find out. Another book that has been on so many TBRs that I'm also so ashamed I have still not read anything by this author because I'm a fantasy reader, that is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. I feel like this is the right place to start with Naomi Novik. I also own a Deadly Education and Spinning Silver, but I've heard this one is the top like rated or top favorite. I'm adding it to this list. It is going to happen this year, I promise you. And if I don't, I think I'm going to be extremely disappointed in myself, especially because my friend Kaylin, I think she may have bought this for me. She did. Of course she did. This is one of her favorite books, and I just know I'm gonna love it because Kaylin and I have such similar reading taste. So I need to trust her. I need to trust my gut. I think it scares me because it just looks so dense. I don't know. I honestly don't know what's keeping me from reading this. I think this is the Rumpelstiltskin retelling. Anyways, there's dragons involved, there's creepy woods, and there's wizards. What's not to like? Next up, you guys may laugh a little bit at me. I don't even care. Apparently this was a duology that never got finished. I don't know why, because apparently a lot of people liked it. That is The Dark Vault by Victoria Schwab. The first book is actually called The Archived. This is just a bind up of both of them because I didn't like the individual covers with the girl's face. I really want to get back more into authors that I know I love and can trust because that has the potential for me to have another great reading year. So I just want to return to V.E. Schwab. I didn't really care for the Darker Shade of Magic series. I kind of thought about reading that one or giving it a second shot. Honestly, I'm just not a huge rereader. I would love to own the books and read them at some point, but I just don't think this year is going to be the year. We are definitely going back in time here and going to give this one a shot, but it does look very dark and eerie. It's at a library and it just sounds super spooky. I believe people's memories are stored in these books as well, and it just has a premise that really has potential. Even though if I don't exactly care for this book, my purpose behind this one is just to get through more of my favorite authors' backlist. Speaking of which, I love Leigh Bardugo, and have I read King of Scars yet? No, I have not. I actually finished reading off Shadow and Bone, the trilogy, last year, I think, before this show came out, and I really loved it, and I want to know more about Nikolai. I think we actually have more of Nina in this book, which Nina is like one of my favorite characters from Six of Crows. So I think this is the book in which point the characters from both the series start to combine and meet. I'm just very eager to read this one. I know it was so hyped when it came out, and after reading Ninth House, I just need some type of redemption from Leigh Bardugo for me to like not hate her, honestly. So it is time that I finally read this one. Another author that I really fell in love with again this past year was Sarah J. Maas. I adored Crescent City so incredibly much. I flew through the ACOTAR series, and I actually read Throne of Glass first when I got back into reading, and I gave this 2 stars. But as you guys can tell, I own this whole series and I need to love this series. If I don't love it, I'm gonna be so disappointed. I just don't see why I wouldn't, or I don't remember why I gave this 2 stars. I don't know if I am gonna start with Assassin's Blade or this one, but I've heard this one is a little bit more fast-paced, and so maybe I should start with this. Regardless, I need to get back into this series and give it another chance because a lot of my friends love this series. I love Sarah J. Maas, so I don't have any more excuses. The next fantasy book that I have been recommended a lot this past fall when it came out is Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. I actually read Fable by Adrienne Young and was not the biggest fan, but that could be because that was young adult. The Unsolved Murder, Ancestral Magic, and A Second Chance at True Love sounds like the perfect formula for me to give this 5 stars. I've heard it's so atmospheric and I really do love her writing. So again, I'm giving another author a second chance in hopes that this could be the one book that I really love. And the last fantasy series is The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. Every time I see this book on my shelves, I could literally pick it up and enjoy it. Like, I'm always in the mood and I'm so curious about this series. I think I originally heard of it from Murphy or Elliot Brooks, I'm not sure which one, but the way she talked about the magic system, it just sounded like such a unique story, and I really love that about fantasy. Like, the world and the magic system has got to be intriguing, otherwise I'm a little bit bored. This is also blurbed by Sarah J Maas, which says one of the best fantasy novels I've read in a long time, and I just need to know why it's one of the best series she's read in a long time. I feel like this has the potential to become my whole personality, where I just binge the whole series and I recommend it to every person that I can. At least I'm really hoping. I am praying for a 5-star for this one because, like I said, I've been eyeing it for such a long time now. And last but definitely not least, I had to end this video with a classic because I am terrible at reading classics. I cannot even tell you which ones I've actually read. So Little Women has to be at the top of this list because I am obsessed with the new movie. I grew up with the 1992 movie with Kirsten Dunst. I just think these women are so inspirational and this whole book is inspirational. Marmee is just such a strong, independent woman. She's so caring, and I also just love the humor that is in the movies. So I'm really hoping that we get some of that in this book. It's 620 pages, which I've read bigger. Sarah J Maas is bigger, but I feel like this is just going to be one that I savor and I tab up, and it's just been on my list for far too long. So this year is going to be the year. I feel like wintertime around Christmas may be when I pick this up. I'm obsessed with Little Women, but I have not read the book. But hopefully after this year, I won't have to feel like a fake fan anymore. All right, friends. Well, there you have it. Those are my top 23 books that I cannot wait to read. Honestly, if this was my TBR just for the entire year and I took my time with these books, I would be so incredibly happy because I am predicting these are going to be possible new favorites of the year. I'm just very excited to take my time reading this year and really read what's on my shelves. I feel like I've only read maybe a fourth of what I own, which is so terrible, and we just need to knock out some of that ratio. I am so excited to get to these books, and shout out to my friends so much for choosing a book for me. I think this is just gonna make it more interesting and more fun, and I love my friends so much and I trust them. So hopefully these will be some 5-star reads for me. Once again, thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video, and thank you for watching this video. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next bookish video.